Yampi Sangang Saranang Gacchami Tatiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami Tatiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami Tatiyampi Sangang Saranang Gacchami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. To observe the 5 precepts, say after me. I observe the precept of abstaining from killing beings. I observe the precept of abstaining from stealing. I observe the precept of abstaining from sexual misconduct. I observe the precept of abstaining from telling lies. I observe the precept of abstaining from taking intoxicating drinks and drugs. With the refuge of the noble triple gem. I observe these precepts for happiness in this life, for rebirth in heaven, to escape from the sufferings of samsara. May it help me and be a blessing. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's go chant the qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Iti piso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho Vidyacharana sampanno sugato lokvidu anuttaro purisa dhammasarathi sattadeva manussanam buddho bhagavati Swakhato bhagavata dhammo sanditiko akaliko ehi passiko opanaiko paccatang viditabbo vinyuhiti Supatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Ujupatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Nyayapatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho Samiti patipanno bhagavato savaka sangho yadidan tattari purisa yugani atte purisa puggala is bhagavato savaka sangho Ahuneyo pahuneyo dakhineyo Zelikaraniyo Anotterang Punyaketang Lokasati Sadhu Sadhu Sadhu. I'd like to pay homage to my teacher, Vinod Lokusami Nwasi. May he have good health and long life. May he too realize the Four Noble Truths in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo Buddhaya. So, recently we've talked about many different topics, about mindfulness, we talked about wise consideration. Last week we talked about how to consider this body, right? We talked about something different. We talked about contemplating how this body is made up of a skeleton, right? So we practiced that. So every week we're learning new things. So today I wanted to ask you, so during our day-to-day, every day, so you might be going to work or you might be going to school or whatever the case may be, we interact with people. Not just with people, we do all sorts of activities, and sometimes things go our way and sometimes things don't go our way. So when these things happen, let's say, for example, things don't go the way we want them to be. We want them to be. At that point, what do you do? So, for example, let's say you're trying to get to work, but then you're late. Or maybe you're trying to get your work done before a deadline, but then things don't go your way, right? Or let's say people aren't being cooperative with you. So all these things happen to all of us, I think. So during these types of situations, we tend to get upset, or we lose our mindfulness, we lose our peace of mind. So what should we do at that time? So one thing is, I think I wanted to introduce to you all is, when there are moments when we're upset, when we have pressure in our minds, when we want to release it, right? When we want to get things off our mind, the best thing to do, one of the best things to do is to walk back and forth. So this might be a new thing to you, it might be an older thing to you, to walk back and forth. So this is something the Buddha taught. It's called walking meditation. So it's hard to do walking meditation over a Zoom call. So walking meditation, basically walking forward and backwards. So normally, when we practice walking meditation, we start with the right foot, put a right foot forward, and then we walk. We don't keep that step too far. We don't take that step too short either. Just normal. It doesn't need to be too fast. It doesn't need to be too slow. Just walk normally. So when do we practice this? It doesn't have to be times when the environment is peaceful, right? Because we can't always expect the world to be ready for us to meditate, right? So we should be ready to protect our mind in any situation, right? Sometimes we think when we're upset or when there's things going on, we think, okay, we need to go far away. That's how we solve our problems. But eventually, no matter how far we go physically, those problems still follow us mentally. So running away from any problem is not the solution. Not just that, sometimes we think too much about something. So we might be sitting and thinking about, why did this happen to me? Why did these things happen? We might think like that. Or we might think sleeping is the best way. Because I know we all like to sleep. I haven't met anyone who doesn't like to sleep. Have you ever met anyone who doesn't like to sleep? Everyone likes to sleep. But then sometimes with those problems, sometimes they even see the problems in their dreams, right? Or maybe after they wake up, they start remembering the problems, and then it's back to the same old situation, right? So something I think we can all practice is walking meditation. So you just need to find a space and you walk forwards. And you don't need to be too rigid. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to think too much. Am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? You don't need to think too much, or else it ruins the whole meditation. It's just naturally walking. So then when you walk, so we can think of many things, right? But here's one thing you should just keep in mind. At that time, you just think, may all beings be well and happy. And then you take a step forward. Then the next step, what do you think? Something else? No. You think the same thing again. May all beings be well and happy. You keep another step forward. And then you take another step and think, may all beings be well and happy. So what's the point of thinking the same sentence again and again? You see, when you think of one thing again and again and again, the mind tends to wander less here and there, because you're concentrating your mind on one topic, right? So sometimes I think where our mind wanders here and there. Is that not the case? You think about work and school and all sorts of things. But one benefit of just thinking, may all beings be well and happy, is that we just focus our mind to one thing. So we think about that again and again, and eventually we think about other things. But at that point, what do we think? No, I need to get my mind back on track. Get my mind back on track. And then we start thinking, may all beings be well and happy. Take another step forward. May all beings be well and happy. So, as I mentioned before, when do we do this? If someone blamed us, at that time, we're upset. This happens to all of us, I think. And so we keep it within us. And then sometimes people smile through the pain, but deep down, things are working, right? That time, you can just go to the side, just walk, or maybe even stand. Think, may all beings be well and happy. May all beings be well and happy. So I remember I was practicing this. I was teaching this to children. And so the children didn't understand why we need to do this. Because doing the same thing again and again is not exactly exciting for children, right? But now we're dealing with more an adult group here. So now it's different, right? Now we can see from a different lens, like how could this be beneficial? Okay, yeah, there are many times in our life where we have problems. So if we keep bringing our mind back to positive things, it'll be very beneficial to us. But as a child, it doesn't make any sense. So you see how our life develops, right? And so we gain problems as we grow older and older and older. But sometimes the solution is not an advanced solution, but a basic solution, right? So yes. So what I want you all to do when you go home is that find an empty place, and then you start walking. So when you practice this, you don't want to look too up like this. When you walk, you don't want to look too down like this. You should look somewhere in the middle, okay? You want to look somewhere in the middle, So that way your neck doesn't hurt. Okay? So when you walk, you just look normally down. And it doesn't have to be too slow or too fast. And you just think, may all beings be well and happy. May all beings be well. And maybe you can practice that for 5 minutes. Over time, what happens is that same message replays in your head again and again and again. Just like how I think we all have our favorite songs in our life. Do you have a favorite artist? Do you have a favorite musician? Maybe that person's face has already popped up into your mind. So we all have our favorite songs. And those songs get repeated in our minds again and again. But if we really think about it, those songs don't have any benefit in our life. So sometimes you might think, what's the point of practicing loving kindness like this? We should always keep in mind, all beings like happiness. All beings desire happiness. Is that true? What do you think? All beings desire happiness. So is there any time where there's too much loving kindness in the world? No, right? You can never have too much. Is there any moment where you might practice loving kindness and then in the future time, you might think, that time when I was practicing loving kindness was a waste of my time. I shouldn't have done that. Would you ever think something like that? No, right? So even though it seems pointless right now, the fact is we need to think about our life. Because the Buddha is always talking about the reality of life. He's talking about our reality. And the reality is that we feed our minds with so many things. But how many of them are beneficial to our life? How many of them are healthy? Right? So we need to start with the basics. So anytime you face any trouble from anybody, it can be someone in your family, or it can be at work. Maybe you have a lot of pressure. So a lot of people come to the monastery, for example, and they look very nice. They're smiling, and they're wearing nice white clothes, and they smell very nice. They're maybe wearing nice perfume. But deep down, we don't even notice they have problems. So everyone is dealing with problems. But when you're going on the subway, you don't see problems. You see a nice face covered with nice makeup. Or maybe you see someone running along the street, jogging maybe, and they look busy. Or maybe you see people focused on all sorts of things. So we don't see problems. We only see people being happy. And maybe we think to ourselves, how come everyone is happy except me? Because we have problems inside, right? Do we have a sign on our forehead saying, I got a problem? No, right? So we all face problems, but none of us talk about how to deal with those problems, right? So sometimes we'd be sad all the time. Sometimes we're dealing with sicknesses. Some people deal with sicknesses and we don't even know. One person came to this monastery, and we handed out food to people in need, low income families. And so there's this young girl. She came, and so I explained to her, this is what we call the Dhatu Mandira. This is where the relics of the Buddha is. So I'm explaining to her, and she's looking at me like this, without saying anything, for a long time. I thought maybe she was very interested in what I was saying. But then a few moments later, her mother came and said, she's very hard of hearing. She can't hear very well. So I thought she was really interested in what I was saying. It turned out she couldn't hear what I was saying. So you see, she looked perfectly normal. But people are dealing with illnesses. People have physical problems. People have problems internally, right? So there are all of us here are dealing with something. So to the medicine for that is to practice meditation. But in order to practice meditation, there are these 5 things that give us problems. You know those 5. When we practice meditation, there are 5 problems. The Buddha explains they're called the 5 hindrances. Okay. So when we want to practice, saying we're practicing loving kindness, and a thought comes to our mind, that thought is about sensual desires. So what's the first one? The first enemy to meditating is sensual desires. Either we might think about a beautiful person, or maybe while we're walking, we see a beautiful view, and then we start thinking about that view too much. So that's also sensual desires. Maybe we're walking, maybe we're meditating, and we remember a song we heard, or we hear beautiful sounds. So what is that called? Sensual desires. Or maybe we're walking and we smell things, smell nice things. So we're looking, what is that smell? That's a nice smell. Kind of like strawberry. So what is that? Sensual desires. Okay? So the same thing goes with our tongue and our body and our mind. So these are what we call sensual desires. So these things, when that happens, what are we supposed to think? While we're meditating, we realize our mind is getting distracted by sensual desires. Things that are pleasant, that we observe through our senses. At that time, you need to understand sensual desires occur because of 2 reasons. What are those 2 reasons? We see something pleasant and unwise consideration. What are those 2? We see something pleasant, we see a beautiful sight, and unwise consideration. What is that unwise consideration? Wow, this is a beautiful sight. And then we start getting attached to that sight. But really, all we see are mountains, rocks. It's just rocks. Or maybe we see the ocean. We forget that it's just water, right? So we get overly attached to things. We might be getting attached to songs, but we forget songs are just words, right? Or sometimes we get attached to smells, but we think, hold on, it's just a bunch of chemicals mixed up. So when we realize sensual desires is just these 2 things, we can abandon that. So what's the first enemy to our meditation? Sensual desire. So we see or hear, smell, taste, touch, something pleasant, something we like, something we desire. And with that is unwise consideration. Okay? If we see something pleasant and we have wise consideration, at that point it wouldn't be a problem. We wouldn't get attached to that. Why? Because of wise consideration. So the problem is not that we're seeing beautiful things. So, because you can imagine, right, monks in those days, in the Buddhist time, they lived in the most beautiful places. For example, I'll give you an example. In Anuradhapura, in Sri Lanka, the province called Anuradhapura, in Mihintale, there's this beautiful cave. There's like a big rock cave, and that's where the Arahant Mahinda, the one who brought Buddhism to Sri Lanka, he lived there. And it's so beautiful. You would even think, how can you meditate here? Because it's always beautiful. If it was us, we'd always be looking at the view, right? We wouldn't be meditating. We look at the view. We look at the birds. So you see, the problem is not the pleasant view, the pleasant object. The problem is unwise consideration. Okay? So in those days, people didn't have, the Buddhist disciples didn't have unwise consideration. They had wise consideration. And so they were able to have concentration while seeing beautiful things. So the first problem is sensual desires. The second one is ill will, okay, anger. So let's say we're meditating And hold on, now we remember who? We remember Susan. Susan yelled at me just like 30 minutes ago. And now her words are ringing in our minds, right? So what do we need to think at that time? Now we're meditating and we think about these bad things. Anger. We should think, this anger has arisen because of two things. What are those two things? The two things is that we see something or hear something unpleasant. It's called patiganimi. We see something or hear something unpleasant. And not just that, we see it and we have unwise consideration. Why did they say that thing? That's not right. And then what do? We hold on to those bad words. We don't let it go. If we just let it go, no problem. No problem. We can be just like the mountain. No matter how much the wind comes, the wind blows, it never shakes the mountain. But are we like a mountain? Or are we like a skinny little tree that just blows down with one little with the blow of a wind? So you see, when there are things we see that are unpleasant, right? Sometimes we see things and we're like, hold on, that's not the way it should be. It should be organized like this. Or maybe we hear things we don't like, smell things we don't like. What is that smell? It's so annoying, right? Maybe we're eating and then we taste like something really terrible. So we start complaining to the person at the restaurant, right? So when we get these things, we need to understand, okay, now I'm getting upset because of two reasons. Because I'm experiencing something unpleasant and because of unwise consideration. So you can see there's something recurring here again and again. What is that thing called? Unwise consideration. In each and every of these 5, there's one thing that repeats. It's unwise consideration. So the first enemy to our meditation is called sensual desire. The second one is called the second one is called ill will. Okay. So why the sensual desires occur? Because we see something pleasant and we have unwise consideration to it. So our mind attaches to it. The second thing is we see something unpleasant and our mind attaches onto it. So we get upset. Okay, is that clear? So we understand why these things are, before we meditate, we should understand why these are enemies to our meditation. Okay. The third one is something that we all have big trouble when we try to meditate. It's called sleepiness or drowsiness or laziness, right? Who doesn't have that problem? We all have that problem. So when we practice meditation, sometimes we feel tired. And we think maybe a lot of people think that sleepiness is like we need 8 hours of sleep, they say. So if we miss, that means now all of a sudden in our minds, it's established. If we miss like 30 minutes out of our normal sleep schedule, what happens? Everything falls apart. In our mind, we think, okay, no, I missed 30 minutes. I need to get those 30 minutes back. So now Swami Wants is doing the meditation. This is the perfect time to get back my 30 minutes of sleep that I missed, right? So that's not actually the case in the Buddhist teaching. Practicing meditation, so when we talk about sleepiness, we can control our sleepiness through mindfulness. So sleepiness occurs when there's dislike and discontent. Did you get that? Sleepiness occurs when there's dislike and discontent. For example, I know we all have this experience. So when there's times when we need to study for an exam, we have dislike, we have discontent, and so it's very difficult to stay up all night and study. But now, hold on, there's a 3-hour new episode, okay? Let's say new episode of Game of Thrones. I never watched Game of Thrones, I'll have to say that first. Game of Thrones, right? Everyone loved that show. And there's a finale, okay? And you have to watch it for 1 hour, but they release it at 2 a.m. in the morning. Are you gonna say, I can't watch it, right? Let's say instead of the finale, there's an exam at 2 in the morning. Are you gonna do the exam, or are you gonna be yelling at the teacher? Or are you gonna be upset? So you see, with laziness, with sleepiness, dislike and discontent has a big effect to it. Okay, so with this, what I'm saying to you right now, with this program, if you have dislike and discontent, you're probably gonna sleep. And for some people, maybe they find this very informative. They find this very interesting. Maybe they're having a problem right now with their life, and they're really dying to know more about these 5 hindrances. How are we going to practice this meditation? So for that person, they're going to be looking like this, and they're going to be listening very carefully, right? So when we get sleepy, there's a big thing rolling behind it. It's that there's this drowsiness, laziness, this dislike, discontent in practicing the Dhamma. So at that point, you should understand, hold on, I have this dislike, discontent. If I start to like what I'm doing, if I start to shake off this sleepiness, at that time you need mindfulness, right? You need to understand, hold on, I'm getting sleepy. I have this discontent right now. So if you abandon that, and you start to so if you were to say that in the formula that we were mentioning, there are 2 reasons because okay, does everyone hear me? I don't know when I was cut off, but basically, so we all heard what I said, right, about heedlessness. You can shake your head to say yes or no. We were talking about drowsiness, right? Yes or no? Yes, right, okay. I was on a different page. Okay, so that's why I didn't realize that was cut off. Okay, so dislike. So we need to shake off that dislikeness and that heedlessness. And so then we need to have wise consideration. Okay, I'm practicing something beneficial. This will help me to develop my mind. So at that point, what happens is that sleepiness goes away. Okay, and so that's when we can get back on track. So in the first incident, what was the first one? Sensual desires. The first problem was sensual desires. So at that point, what do we think? We can think, so we can think of the foulness of the body. If we're thinking about things about the body, we can think about the foulness of the body. Oh, this body is just made up of head hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, skin. You think like that. If you see any type of body, you won't get attracted to it, attached to it. Okay? So that goes for any type of pleasant thing. When we see that, we can think in that way, the repulsiveness of it. And if we get upset, at that point, we can practice loving kindness. So at that time, that anger goes away. And the third one was heedlessness, right? So let's say we get sleepy. At that time, what can you think about? You can think about something we discussed in previous weeks. It's called mindfulness of death. I could die right now. Who knows if I'm going to die today? I could be in an accident today. Some sort of tragedy could affect me. So before that, maybe I should practice this Dhamma. Maybe I should practice meditating. So if we think like that, then we won't be sleepy, right? We'll shake off that, say, hold on, something can happen to my life. Before that, I need to practice this. I need to develop my mind. So that time, that person's sleepiness goes away. But sometimes people don't have sleepiness it's not as much of a problem to some people. Some people have a problem where their mind is distracted. They think of so many things. Okay? So at that time, if that's not the case, they think they regret about things in the past. So a lot of people regret. They have remorse. So why does that happen? You remember things about the past, and then you have unwise consideration. Is that clear? We remember about the things in the past. Oh, I didn't treat my husband right, my children right. You might think like that. Or you might think, I did something wrong to my friend in the past, or I got a loan in the past that I wasn't able to pay back, or I'm having financial problem right now, or I did something wrong in the workplace. Now you're getting remorse, regret. I did my parents wrong. You might be thinking of all sorts of things. At that time, what do you need to think? Are you supposed to regret? So regret is not something praised by the Buddha. When we think about things in the past, we need to let them go. Let them go. That's what we call wise consideration. So to help that, what's the best way to overcome regret? Impermanence. These thoughts are impermanent. The things I did, they're all impermanent. They all changed. There's no need to think about these things again. What happened in the past is now in the past. I'm a new person now. I'm someone who's practicing the Dhamma. Maybe in the past I wasn't trying to practice these things, but now I'm practicing the Dhamma. I'm a person who's trying to cultivate this mind. Therefore, if we keep thinking about that, if we keep dragging the past with us, it will just be a hindrance to us. Okay? It'll just be bothersome to us. It won't do us any good. So in this way, that person gets rid about things in the past. They're no longer sad about the past. So their mind is no longer distracted. Okay? And so if we're unwise when we think about the past, we feed those thoughts. And eventually something really small becomes like a rapid forest fire. So small fire becomes a big fire, right, in the forest, if the leaves are dry. So in the same way, if we think about something small, just something really small, oh, that person who in the past they did something really terrible to me. If we think about it again and again, how quickly does that envelop our mind? How dangerous is it? But that's because of unwise consideration. If we are wise, if we think about what does wisdom mean there? If we're thinking about impermanence, we are capable, we are skillful enough to let it go. Is that clear? So only if we're wise, only if we use wise consideration at that time. If we don't, we're going to fall into a terrible situation and our mindfulness goes completely into the dustbin. Okay, so what are the 4 hindrances that we talked about so far? Sensual desire, ill will, and then sleepiness, laziness, and regret and remorse. Because of that, we start thinking about things too much. And the 5th one, last but not least, is doubt. Is what Swaminathan is saying, right? If practicing this meditation, is the meditation we're doing correct? Am I practicing this right? Will I be able to develop my mind by thinking about this one sentence again and again? Would I be able to gain some sort of results? So when we think like that, what happens? We're feeding doubt. We're feeding doubt. Can we ever do will we be able to practice that meditation ever successfully with that doubt? No, right? There's only one way to do it. It's to just practice and see if there are results or not. So for example, so sometimes we might think that doubt is helpful, right? So in the past, there was the Greeks. A long time ago, they practiced skepticism, right? They would doubt everything. So if we were to think, okay, in the morning, let's say we wake up in the morning, will I be able to get to work on time? If I were to drive the car, would I get into an accident? Maybe I'll take an Uber. If I take the Uber, will they get into an accident? Will I ever get to work on time? If you keep thinking like that, will you ever get to work? No. Eventually, you'll be thinking and thinking, and you'll just end up skipping work that day. You'll end up skipping interacting with the world that day. You'll never reach your goal. So you see, doubt is not a weapon. Doubt is not something that helps us. Doubt is the enemy, the hindrance, hinders us from meditating. So if we doubt things, what happens is our mind starts to establish us into useless things. The mind starts thinking about things that don't matter. I don't know if you've talked with people, some people doubt everything. And so sometimes they doubt things that we find as just normal, right? It's normal to accept. So when we start speaking with that person, we start to realize they're doubting things that don't need doubt, right? Are we living in a computer right now, right? So people, it's at one point really accepted that view, and some people are to this day really thinking that we're in a computer program right now, right? They watched the Matrix movie one too many times. So you see, doubt doesn't help us. The Buddha preached that a person who is in doubt all the time, they think, how is this? How is that? So they need to discipline themselves. So in order for you to practice this, you need to have some faith in what the Buddha taught. Because what we teach here is something the Buddha taught, right? So you need to have a little bit of faith and confidence in what we're doing here, or else you'll never gain the real benefit in this meditation practice. Is that clear? So we can't do anything without having confidence in what we're doing, right? So we need to have confidence. So what are the 5 sensual desires? Ill will, sloth and torpor, so laziness, sleepiness, restlessness and remorse, so thinking about things a lot, about the past, regretting. And then the 5th one is doubt. Sensual desires, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and remorse, and doubt. So these are what we call the 5 hindrances. Okay? So when we practice walking meditation, we can even get sleepy. That happens. Even though we're walking, we get sleepy. Why does that happen? Because we get discontent and dislike. And so when we get this a little bit of sleepy feeling, we start to like that feeling and start to not like practicing what we're, the meditation. Okay, so yes, so that these are the 5 hindrances. So there's this beautiful story that I want to also mention to you prior to practicing the meditation, about a monk who practiced walking meditation. Okay, so when the Buddha was living in Rajagaha, in the Vulture's Peak, it's called it's a mountain. At that time, there was this monk called Sona. What was his name? Sona. This monk's name was Sona. So at that time, this monk was proclaimed by the Buddha. He was the foremost. He was the best out of all the Buddha's disciples. He was the best at practicing practicing the Dhamma. He had the most energy. Okay, so he was thinking, I have the most energy, so I should practice the Dhamma. So what happens is he walked back and forth in the what we call a sakmana. So it's like a big rectangle box, a long rectangle box filled with sand, so it's easy to walk. So it's designed to practice walking meditation. So he walked so much so that his feet started to crack and bleed. So even that was the case, he was still walking and walking and walking. So while he was doing that, he wasn't letting go. He was practicing, walking back and forth. And then, even though that was the case, was he able to realize the Dhamma? Was he able to get anything beneficial? No, because he was trying so hard, too hard. So much so that he thought to himself, you know what? Even though the Buddha said I'm one of the most energetic disciples, I'm practicing this much, and still nothing happens. You know what? I have so much money at home. My parents are wealthy. I think I'll just let go of this monk thing. It's just not working out for me. I'll let go of this monk life and become a normal person. I'll go back into the household life. So while he was thinking that, the Buddha came there. The Buddha saw what he was thinking and came there using his psychic powers. So then the Buddha said, Sona, did you just think right now, I am a person that the Buddha praised my persistence. He praised my persistence, my energy, but still I wasn't able to gain anything. If I were to go home, that would be better. Did you think like that? And so now what happened to Sona? He was probably shocked at that moment. He said, yes, I did think that. I guess I did think. So what did the Buddha say? He gave a beautiful simile, an example. He said, Sona, when you were at home, did you play the lute? You know what the lute is? You think like a guitar? Let's say instead of saying lute, because maybe most of us don't know what a lute is. Because to be honest, I didn't know what a lute was either before reading this sermon, this book. So lute, so let's say guitar, right? So he asked, Sona, did you play a guitar? Right? So that seems more relatable, right? Did you play a guitar when you were at home? So he said, yes, I played a guitar. Or maybe it's guitar or a harp, right? Anything with strings. So when you play the guitar, when your strings are too tight, did you play the song that you wanted to play successfully? What's the answer to that? No, right? The sound is too high pitched. And then the Buddha asks if the guitar, the lute, if the guitar's strings are too loose, can you play the guitar? No, right? You can't play it. The strings are too loose, so it doesn't make a sound. And then in the same way, then he asks if your strings were not too loose or not too tight, isn't it at that point that you can play your guitar? At that time, what did Sona say? Yes, when it's not too tight when it's not too loose, that's when we can practice. In the same way, Sona, too much persistence leads to restlessness. When too much energy leads to restlessness. And when when our persistence is too low, that leads to laziness. Okay? When persistence is too high, it leads to restlessness. When persistence is too low, it leads to laziness. Makes sense, right? Thus, you should determine the right pitch for your persistence. How beautiful is that? So you should tune it, the right pitch. So eventually, Sona practiced, and then he started to not think about things he wasn't too persistent, too energetic, or not too less energetic. And he eventually practiced and became an arahant. So the arahants, we need to remember, even though the arahants, the liberated disciples of the Buddha, even though they gained something so special, right? Can you imagine someone who has no greed, hatred, delusion? They have not even the slightest of fear or confusion. They don't forget things. They're very mindful, right? They have full control over their mind, right? That is not something easy. Even the arahants, every day, they always thought about loving kindness. So even though they did what they had to do, even though they have no more job, they don't have anything else that needs to be done, even the arahants spend time practicing loving kindness to all beings. So how much more so do we need to practice loving kindness? So eventually, that Sona became an arahant, and he says in his Gatha, he makes this beautiful verse. He says, when my energy was overexerted, the supreme teacher in the world created the simile of a lute for me. So the Buddha taught the Dhamma, and when I heard it, I listened to it and I practiced it. Practicing serenity of mind for the attainment of the highest goal, I attained the 3 knowledges. So I realized Nibbana. When you're dedicated to renunciation and seclusion of the heart, when you're dedicated to kindness and the end of grasping, so listen carefully to these beautiful verses. When you're dedicated to the end of craving and clarity of heart, and you've seen the arising of the senses, your mind is rightly freed. For that one rightly freed, a person with peaceful mind, there's nothing to be improved, nothing more to do. And now he gives a very beautiful simile. As the wind cannot stir a solid mass of rock. So the wind, can it ever make any difference to a mountain? No, right? So to sights, tastes, sounds, smells and touches, and thoughts, whether liked or disliked. So throughout our whole life, we have problems. We either get things we like or things we don't like, right? So to sight, taste, sounds, smells, and touches, and thoughts, whether they are liked or disliked, don't disturb the poised one, the person who is very mindful. Their mind is steady and unfettered. There are no defilements. There aren't any stains in that mind. And so that is what Sona said after he became an arahant. So now let's see if we can practice this. So let's practice. So we can practice sitting. So now we'll practice loving kindness meditation. So now we'll do this while sitting. But I hope that maybe we can practice this at your own time. You can practice walking meditation and think, may all beings be well and happy. So now we'll practice loving kindness, sitting. So now we can all close our minds, close our eyes, and listen carefully to what I say. So now it's time to practice loving kindness. So let's keep in mind the 5 hindrances: sensual desire, ill will, sleepiness, regret, remorse, and doubt. So while we meditate, we'll see that these things come to bother us. But now we are ready. Now we've learned who the enemies are, and now we've made our protection. Using wise consideration, we are able to tackle sensual desires by thinking about the repulsive things, repulsiveness of things. To tackle ill will with loving kindness. To tackle laziness with heedfulness by thinking about the recollection of death. And to not think about, to not dislike what we're practicing. So that way we can overcome our sleepiness. And we won't hold on to things that happened in the past. We won't regret. And we won't doubt. We place confidence in the teachings that these will bring benefits to us. So let us practice loving kindness for a few moments. Listening carefully to what I say. May I be free from anger, be free from ill will, be free from jealousy, be free from mental suffering, be free from physical suffering. May I live in peace. May I live happily. May all beings in this place be free from anger, be free from ill will, be free from jealousy, be free from mental suffering, be free from physical suffering. May all beings in this place live in peace. May all beings in this place live happily. May all beings in this city be free from anger, be free from ill will, be free from jealousy, be free from mental suffering, be free from physical suffering. May all beings in this city live in peace. May all beings in this city live happily. May all beings in this province be free from anger, be free from ill will, be free from jealousy, be free from mental suffering, be free from physical suffering. May all beings in this province live in peace. May all beings in this province live happily. May all beings in this country be free from anger, be free from ill will, be free from jealousy, be free from mental suffering, be free from physical suffering. May all beings in this country live in peace. May all beings in this country live happily. May all beings in this world be free from anger, be free from ill will, be free from jealousy, be free from mental suffering, be free from physical suffering. May all beings in this country live in peace. May all beings in this country live happily. May all beings in this world be free from anger, be free from ill will, be free from jealousy, be free from mental suffering, be free from physical suffering. May all beings in this world live in peace. May all beings in this world live happily. May all beings in all worlds whether living near or far, whether they're short or tall, whether they're seen or unseen. May all beings everywhere rejoice in this loving kindness, as a mother would risk her own life to protect her only child. Even so, towards all beings, even they may be our enemies, let us share this gift of loving kindness, above, below, and all around, unobstructed, without hatred or resentment, whether standing, walking, or sitting, or even lying down. Let us share this loving kindness. May all beings be free from anger, be free from ill will, be free from jealousy, be free from mental suffering, be free from physical suffering. May all beings live in peace. May all beings live happily. 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 Through the power of this loving kindness, may it help us to develop this mind, this troublesome mind. May it help us overcome anger. May it help us to everlasting peace. May it help us to realize the Four Noble Truths, to end suffering in this 𝐿𝐼𝐴 Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Now we can slowly open our eyes. So in this way, as I mentioned at the very beginning, if there are any moments when we're upset, when we're dealing with any type of trouble, we need to practice loving kindness. So we practice loving kindness to ourselves and to others, right? So because meditation, and especially loving kindness meditation, now it's getting difficult for people. Now society is different. People are different. Life is different these days. So it's difficult for people to sit down and practice meditation. Or sometimes when there are moments when we're upset or when we're frustrated, at that time there's no place to sit. Sometimes we can't even sit thinking about things too much. So practically, an easy solution, better solution for most people is to walk. So you can walk, and you don't need to think about the whole loving kindness meditation. You can think about just that one verse. May all beings be loved. So when we think like that, what happens is we're able to gain peace of mind, and we're able to think about something that is powerful, positive. And eventually, we don't even realize about the things that are bothering us slowly go away. So when you practice loving kindness, practice it happily, not with discontent, or else now you know what happens. You get sleepy. So practice loving kindness. And so now we'll take a 2-minute break. And then after that, you can ask any problems or questions that you have. And then we can end the program. So we'll give you 2 minutes to take a break. Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Buddhaya. My homage to the Blessed One, who has enormous qualities. The Blessed One is free from lust, anger and delusion, and that's why he is known as an Arahant. The Blessed One is known as a Samma Sambuddha. That's because our Buddha realized the Four Noble Truths without a guidance of a teacher. Our Blessed One was able to see the past lives, the places where he was born, the worlds he was born before, the clans he was born before. Our Buddha, he is Vijjācarana Sampanna. He was able to see the future births. He was able to see about the future, life after death, births of other beings, how other beings are born and dead and born in other worlds. And our Buddha abandoned all the taints in his mind, and he purified his mind, and he became a Vijjācarana Sampanna. So these three qualities, the abilities of seeing the past lives, that is Ubbe Niva Nusati Jnane, and then the ability of seeing the life after death, that is Chutupapata Jnana, then destructing the taints in the mind is Asavakkaya Jnana. The Blessed One became a Vijjācarana Sampanna. What a blessing for us. So today, just contemplate these three qualities of the Buddha. Our Buddha is an Arahant. He saw things from his eyes, but he was unattached. He heard things, he smelled things, he tasted things. Then he cognized things. The Blessed One touched many things. And the Blessed One was not obsessed with the things he felt from his body. The Blessed One, even the thoughts that occurred in his mind, he was unattached to those thoughts. So The Buddha was an arahant. He did not do evil deeds even in secrecy, guarded the sense faculties, so lived having compassion towards all living beings, was free from lust, anger and delusion. Our Blessed One is an arahant. Our Buddha is a Samma Sambuddha. Our Buddha is a Vidyacharana Sampanna. Just think and recall these three qualities just for one day. It will give you immense happiness and joy for your life. May you be blessed by the Buddha's qualities. Namo Buddhaya.
Okay, Namo Buddhaya. So we're talking about the 5 hindrances. So yes, restlessness and remorse. So in the Buddhist teachings, it definitely talks a lot about regretting about the past and how we're restless about that. But yes, being restless about the future also hinders our meditation progress. So it's the hindrance. And 4 noble truths. So maybe you've heard about the 4 noble truths. Suffering. So birth, aging, sickness, and death. These are things we know as suffering. And the 5 aggregates of clinging. So what we normally think of as me, I, we say I, self, it's this form that we say is I. Form. So what is form? The things made up of the 4 great elements: earth, water, fire, and air. Form, feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral feelings. Form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, so intentions, and consciousness. So these 5, the Buddha says, in brief, if you want to say what is suffering, it's those 5. So even though we know that these are suffering, we still haven't come to a realization that old age, sickness, and death is suffering, right? So we still all have intoxication with youth. We learned these things before, I think. Intoxication with youth. Intoxication with the fact that we don't get sick. So for example, people who are young, they think I have time to do good things later. So do they have any rush to do good things? No. But if someone's thinking, no, I'm a person who's subject to death. Death can come to me at any time. Young people die all the time. This life is very fragile. When people think about the reality, what happens is they don't have that intoxication with youth. Some people's minds are completely enshrouded with their youthfulness, right? But someone who's always in tune with reality, they're quick to do good things, to do good deeds, to get rid of bad things, to develop good things in their mind, to get rid of bad things out of their mind, as if their head is on fire, right? We wouldn't put off the fire later, right? We do that immediately. Same way, they're quick to do good deeds. So intoxication with youth, intoxication with health, right? Some people think we don't get sick, but maybe they should visit a hospital. You start to realize that there are many sicknesses. People don't even know about sicknesses. So that's a different type of meditation. It's called the meditation on adina sanya, on the dangers, this body. So it's just a meditation solely on all the sicknesses. Buddha talks about all these sicknesses in the Buddhist time, and that's one meditation on how we can get sick. So that's how we can get rid of being intoxicated with health and intoxicated with life, thinking that we don't die, we'll never die. So because we have these intoxications, even though we get old age, even though we're getting older right now, we don't find it as a big problem. Or sickness or death, we don't find that much as a big problem. Because we don't realize that this is a journey, birth and death journey. It's not, we don't realize that. So that's why we still haven't come to a realization about the Four Noble Truths. So if you're a person who has full confidence in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, it's what we call as a stream enter, Sotapanna. So that person has a clear idea of what the Four Noble Truths is, and their confidence never shakes. They know for sure that these are the Four Noble Truths. So basically it's just like a post, and half of that post is in the ground, and half of it is, and big portion of it is over the ground. So will that post shake easily? No, right? Because that post is in the ground firmly. The same way, a person who's a stream enter, their confidence in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha is unshakable. So they realize that this is the Four Noble Truths. And then eventually, an Arahant completely realizes the Four Noble Truths and escapes from suffering. And so sometimes we also share merits with devas, right? So in the time of the Buddha, many people practiced the Dhamma, became stream enterers. So there are 4 stages. When you practice the Buddha's teachings, there are 4 stages. Someone who has entered the path. So they're not just an ordinary person, entered the path, entered this stream enter. The once returner, non-returner, and the Arahant. Stream enter, once returner, non-returner, Arahant. So if you're an Arahant, you will not be reborn again. But as a stream enter, once returner, you can be born in a heavenly destination, right? You can also be born in a human world, but many go to the heavenly world, right? And if you're a non-returner, all non-returners are born in what is called the Brahma world. Okay, so when we share merits to a virtuous group of heavenly beings. So we share merits to like heavenly beings like Kataragama Deviyo. So he is a person who's, from as far as I can remember, he is a stream enter. So people like that are people who have unshakable confidence in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, right? So while the Buddha was alive, how many people realized the Dhamma, right? So all of them, most of them, went into the heavenly world. So even to this day, they still talk about the Dhamma, they practice the Dhamma. Heavenly beings are known to have a lot of wisdom, so they're able to practice the Dhamma, not like us, because heavenly beings are more capable to have easily gain wisdom than humans do. So that's why we share merits to devas, so that they can also protect us as well. So yes, and the Buddha also explains various types of heavenly beings. Some heavenly beings live in the earth. Some of them live in a heavenly place, not the earth, but in a heavenly place. So the ones who live on the earth are the lowest of devas. So devas such as Kataragama Deva, he lives on the earth. So some devas have a job to protect that area. like to look after one area. And so when we share merits with them, normally we gain protection from them as disciples of the Buddha. That's why we share merits with devas. Okay. And 3 unwholesome karma, right? So greed, hatred, and delusion. So I assume talking about greed, hatred, and delusion. Maybe we're talking about the 10 unwholesome karmas, and in that the last 3. Either way, so we have the roots to our unwholesome behavior is greed, hatred, and delusion. So a person who doesn't have greed or hatred or delusion is an arahant. So we have greed, hatred, delusion to the things we see, hear, smell, touch, taste, and think. So if we were to divide that into the things we do by body, speech, and mind, there are 10 factors, the Buddha taught. So by body is a person who kills, steals, and engages in sexual misconduct. That's the first 3. They're all talking about the body. Person who tells lies, harsh speech, speech to divide friends, and empty speech. So those 4 talk about speech, things we talk about. And the last 3, which makes 10, is greed, covetousness, having greed over what other people have. So that happens in our mind, right? So that's an unwholesome root in our mind, a wholesome thing in our mind, as well as ill will and wrong view. So that's what we call dasa akusala, the 10 unwholesome things. So in that, maybe they're talking about the last 3. So when we have excessive greed over the belongings of others, it's called covetousness. So that's the first unwholesome karma. We accumulate unwholesome karma from that. So eventually that gives result, maybe in this life or the next life or in future lives. And the second one is ill will. And the third one is wrong view. So wrong view means a lot of people in the world don't have the view that there are results in giving, that there are results in giving service, volunteer service, into doing offerings. There are no results. There's nothing called karma. There's nothing called karma. There's no, when you do something good, there are benefits. So for example, there might be someone who kills everyone they see. And there might be another person who is very virtuous, who's living very virtuous every day. They're thinking about practicing loving kindness. You can imagine the best person, the person who doesn't believe in that there are results in good and bad actions. In other words, no results in karma. There's no such thing as karma. Eventually, they believe that both of those people are exactly the same, because there are no results in doing good and bad actions. So that's the fourth wrong view the Buddha explains. And the fifth and sixth is that there's no this life or next life. Some people believe that there's no this life. Some people believe there's no next life. So again, if there's someone who kills anyone they see, tortures people, and does all sorts of terrible stuff, there's another person who is trying to practice good things amidst all those wrong views. Some people might say, you know what, forget about doing those good things. There are no benefits. Even then, they're trying to do good deeds. So even though that's the case, a person who doesn't think about the next life, there are no next life. Eventually, both of those people end up in the same destination. Why? There's no next life, right? But a person who believes that there is this life and a next life, they are more prone to think about their desire to develop good qualities, to develop good deeds, to do good things. But that's why it's important to develop right view, so that there's this world and the next world. There's a special person called mother and father. Some people say that everyone should be treated equally as well as their parents. So the Buddha explains, no, our mother and father should be treated with extra respect out of all the people in the world. And so the Buddha also teaches about beings who are born spontaneously, right? So without a mother and father, they're born spontaneously. So these are things the Buddha saw with understanding. So because we haven't developed our faculties, we haven't developed ourselves, we're not able to see these things, realize these things. But it's not something that we can't see, because the Buddha clearly explains the path. And if we follow the path, we can also see for ourselves these types of things. And the last one is, there's not a person called a Buddha or an Arahant. There are no such type of people. There are no such type of persons who can practice and realize something and escape from suffering. They can't escape from this journey of birth and death. So the Buddha explains, no, there are people who can realize the Four Noble Truths, have extraordinary knowledges, and transcend this life and realize truth for themselves. So when we talk about the body is when we talk about the four great elements, especially form. When we talk about form, that's when we talk about the four great elements: earth, water, heat, and air. So that goes more in what is called dependent origination, paticca samuppada. You've heard of it? Dependent origination. So eye, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. So the mind is not a part of the four great elements. So the eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body is all categorized as the body, right? It's all in the body, right? So those are all made out of earth, water, heat, and air. And they all go back into those four things, right? So, and then the mind. The mind is a completely different category. So there are more subcategories, so it would take some time for me to explain them. Basically, you can learn more if you learn about the dependent origination. Maybe we can talk about that another time. And devas can also attain arahantship. They practice Dhamma. So there are many sermons where the Buddha mentions, like, devas gather and they talk about the Dhamma. There are instances when monks go into the heavenly world and they see the monks and then they learn the Dhamma and they practice, right? There are a lot of heavenly beings who get intoxicated by their happiness, but that doesn't mean everyone is like that, right? If keep in mind their wisdom is also at a higher level, so they are also able to practice the Dhamma and realize. Just like humans, some people are intoxicated with the little happiness that we have right now, and some people search for higher happiness, more than just the things that we see in the human world. So in the Buddhist teachings, devas are very different from Hindu devas. Devas in the Buddhist teaching practice the Dhamma, and sometimes Hindu devas aren't those who practice the Dhamma, right? So most of the devas we talk about in Buddhism is about are devas who are stream enterers or once returners who practice the Dhamma. And so Hindu devas are it's not the case, right? Because we have to realize, remember, a person who's a stream enterer, a person who practices the Dhamma and becomes a stream enterer, Sotapanna, is that they protect their 5 precepts at all costs. So that means they don't kill, they don't steal, they don't engage in sexual misconduct, they don't tell lies, and they don't drink intoxicating drinks and drugs. But some devas in the Hindu religion, they do kill. So it's very clear that there's a difference, right? Okay, so it seems like we ran out of time, so it's 10 after 10. So today, I'm glad that there's a lot of questions. So we can also remind me next week, and you can ask the same questions. So today we gathered a lot of merit. We talked about how in our day-to-day lives, we deal with so many troubles. So in order to face them, we can just walk back and forth, not thinking about nothing, not thinking about the past or the future, but thinking in the present, all beings be well and happy. So that doesn't mean just others, but also ourselves, everyone, because all beings like happiness. So in this way, we learned about that. We learned about the monk Sona and how when he practices too much effort, when we exert too much, we won't reach our goal. And when we're too lazy, we won't reach our goal. Just like the guitar, the lute with the strings, right? If it's too loose or too tight, we can't play the song we desire. But if it's just right, we can play nice, beautiful songs that we hear from Michael Bublé. So in this way, we were able to collect a vast amount of merit. Let's share all that merit with all the devas. May all the devas rejoice in this merit. May they have long life, good health. May all the devas protect all those who joined us today in this program. And may the devas realize the Four Noble Truths. And may they escape this long journey of samsara in this 𝐿𝐼𝐴 Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's share all this merit towards all our departed friends and teachers and relatives. May they all rejoice in this merit. And may they too escape this long journey of samsara in this 𝐿𝐼𝐴 Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's share merit towards our teacher, 𝐿𝐼𝐴𝐿𝐼𝐴𝐿 Mansi, the one who showed us who the Buddha is, the Dhamma is, and who taught us all these beautiful things. And towards all the monks and nuns practicing this Dhamma, may they all realize the Four Noble Truths in this 𝐿𝐼𝐴 Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And let's share merit towards all of you, all of our friends and teachers and relatives. May all of you rejoice in this merit by the power of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. May you always have protection. By the power of this merit, may you too have successful occupation, education, livelihood, and may you too always enjoy practicing the Dhamma, associating with noble friends, and may you develop your minds, and may you also realize the Four Noble Truths in this 𝐿𝐼𝐴 Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's ask for forgiveness from the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Kayena vaca cittena phamadena maya katang acchayang khamame bhanti bhuripanya tathagata. Kayena vaca cittena phamadena maya katang acchayang khamame dhamma sandittika akalika. Kayena vaca cittena phamadena maya katang acchayang khamame sangha punyakhetang anuttara. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Now it's time to worship Swami Maharaj.
Worship Swami Maharaj, you can recite this sentence with me. Okasa vandami bante, ayakatang punyam, samina anumoditatam.
Sadhu, sadhu anumodami.
Samina katang punyam, naihandatatam.
Sadhu anumodita.
Sadhu, sadhu anumodami. โอคาสะดวารเตนะคตังสัตตังอัจฉยังคามตเมบันเต
Kamami kamitabban.
โอคาสกามามิบันเตตุติยัมปิโอคาสกามามิบันเตตติยัมปิโอคาสกามามิบันเต
Sukhateva, may you all have good health and long life. May you all realize the Four Noble Truths. Okay, let's see. We'll see you all next week. Namo Buddhaya.